Thank you all for joining us. Not really sure if, I guess this is amplifying a little bit. I can hear that now. I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota, and really appreciate everyone coming out today. It's a really fun panel. The first panel, no pressure on us at all. The premier plant panel of the morning of the first day, clearly. Cheers! We are going to have lots of time for Q&A because I think we're going to have a discussion, and I would encourage people that have questions at really any point to just head over to that microphone over there for the benefit of people who are watching this both at home and in the future in 30 years, because this is where it all started. Please make sure that you use the microphones when you ask questions rather than just shouting things out from your seat. So we're going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to get into the discussion. This is, in fact, the Building Subsidized and Affordable Broadband session. So I can wait for a second if everyone wants to make an embarrassed exit. We are going to start with an introduction from Clayton Banks, who is the CEO and co-founder of Silicon Harlem.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Or do I need to use the mic?
Yeah, people at home can't hear you.
Okay. Yes, my name is Clayton Banks. I'm the CEO and founder of Silicon Harlem. And essentially, the company is focused on, right now, we're a broadband provider. Prior to that, what we focused on was just galvanizing the community to embrace technology and broadband in general. Now we've got the great favor and working directly with our city to actually provide the very same people we've tried to train. So it's an exciting moment for us.
Excellent. We have next to Clayton, Angela Bennett, who has a great title as Strategic Advisor, is what was listed in my note. I don't know if you have a better title than that. I would stick with Strategic Advisor at DigitalC in Cleveland.
Thank you. Good morning. As you said, my name is Angela Bennett. I am the Director of Advocacy and Impact, as well as the Legal Counsel for DigitalC. And DigitalC, we're located in Cleveland, Ohio, and we are a nonprofit, community-based ISP. And what we've also, evolved into, as you know, in this space, you can't just deliver internet service. If we really want our families to improve, we are now coupling that with devices, as well as connecting our families to resources to improve their outcomes in health, education, and economic well-being.
And I want to note that I've been doing this for 15 years, I feel like when I see other groups doing something, usually DigitalC has done it a year or two earlier. Like, I feel like you're really at the cutting edge of being creative and figuring out how to make sure people are well connected.
Thank you.
And then our final panelist, we're going back to New York City again, to a really excellent photographer who also hangs out and works as the executive managing director of the South Bronx Community Resiliency Agenda.
Good morning. How you guys doing? My name is Danny Peralta. I'm actually the director of the Hunts Point Community Network.
Man, where did I get these bios? That's terrible.
I don't know. It's all, that's not the right bio, but all of that is true. All of it is true. Whatever he said is true. None of it was bad, right? So it was all true. Can't hurt. My name is, again, Danny Peralta. I represent the Hunts Point Community Network, and really I represent the Point Community Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit that was started in 1994, focused on revitalization of the Hunts Point Community Network in the South Bronx. I said the network, right, but I meant the community in general in the South Bronx. And we are a community of organizers, of artists, of young people, of stewards, that have been thinking about how digital inclusion, how digital justice plays a role in our organizing and our cultural work in Hunts Point. And it has media ramifications economically, education-wise, policy, a little bit of everything. We're kind of at the cusp of all of that. We provide a free link to the community that's resilient, that's also, again, prepared for climate change, and again, with a real lens on environmental justice. So that's kind of how we enter into the work, and that's our narrative, and I'm sticking to it, for sure.
Excellent. And now I'll have a chance to do the stuff that I'm good at. The intros are my weak part. Actually, I know what all these folks do actually on a daily basis, and that's what's more exciting. We talked and prepped to talk first about sustainability and making sure that we were using all this money that's available in ways that won't just do good things while the money's available, but how do we make sure we're building things that will continue to work when the money runs out? And so that's the first topic we're going to be discussing. And as I said before, if you want to go stand awkwardly at the microphone, if you have a question throughout this, I will work you in as soon as I'm able to. So let me start with you, Clayton, since you're sitting right next to me. How do we do this sustainably? What sort of things are you thinking about?
In a lot of ways, it's going to vary based on where your focus is. We have a tendency to think everyone has to do the same thing, and that's just simply not true. There's a difference between New York City. I won't compare it to anybody else, but anyway, the point is there's just a difference there, but what is similar is that for anything to sustain any length of time is you're going to need resources. And what we're finding is that people will invest in a project, but they have difficulty investing in your operations. Hello? Anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Operations seems to be like going everyone over. We've got to have somebody do the work.
Right.
So you can come up with a good idea, deploy something, talk about all these things you want to do, but if you don't have the operational capability, you cannot sustain. So one of the things we collectively should do is think about how we can address our local, state, and federal governments, and I'm working right now with the Department of Commerce to figure out how to make sure we get operational funding. You certainly can go to the private sector and see if they'll pitch in, but I think it's very critical if we really want to talk about sustainability. It's not how smart you are anymore. That's important to have, but it's also the resources that keep you going. And therefore, you're going to also need to have a plan that people can embrace. So it's, again, not simply the greatness of what your idea is, but the people that's going to be required to make it happen.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I echo that, and I will also add, it's really leveraging the existing assets that you have in your community. So for us at DigitalC, it was, as far as the infrastructure itself, we needed access to vertical assets, buildings, tall, short, and going out to the community and telling your story and the impact that you want to achieve. We were able to get building owners to join us and literally donating their rooftops, donating their infrastructure to us because, they believed in the mission and the work that we were doing. And in order to, have sustainability and deliver it affordably, that's the big piece. You don't want to just, you can build anything, but, the end user are our residents, and how do we deliver it affordably? And so, from our public housing authorities to private owners, to the school district, each of them, to the county, to the hospitals, to the universities. We have access, essentially it's donated. We pay $10 a year for a lease. And we structure it so that it's a 20-year total. So whether it's, a 5-year with 3 options to renew or a 10-year with an option. But that's the buy-in, and that's one of the ways that we've been able, to deliver it affordably to our families.
Now, can I just ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
So someone says, I want to contribute my rooftop, and that's something that you need in order to be sustainable over time is low-cost access to those vertical assets. Where do you have to worry about liability? If I'm a person that's coming to you, you got to get electricity up there. Like, what goes into that to make that all cost-effective?
So we do have engineers. So we do, bring, from our equipment vendor, coordinating with our engineer. We have a third-party engineering company. So for the owner of the building, so actually have a package. Here's the spill, here's the brochure, here's a copy of a structural analysis letter so that you know that we are doing the due diligence to protect your building. We also provide liability insurance and name the building owner as an additional named insured. And I'm very, very careful about not penetrating rooftops because if you penetrate a rooftop, it can interfere with someone's rooftop warranty. So, we're thinking about, so when you come to the building owners thinking about that in advance, then they know you're being very thoughtful about it. So we're just not asking for it, but really making sure that we're providing the legal assurances that protects their interests as well.
And Danny, how are you thinking about sustainability?
Sure. We are a small nonprofit based in the South Bronx. We don't do ISPs, right? We do after-school programs. We do ASPs, literally, right? And so for us, this work is really about how do we integrate it? How do we think, collaboratively also, right? You mentioned the word asset-based, right? Like everyone who walks through the door, every corner of our campuses are assets to us, right? We activate them. Our digital stewardship program, again, is born from the community. The staff members, and they're in the room. Give it up to Sharon, give it up Luis and Humberto in the back, right? They're being very shy right now, but these are the folks that have come in from the community and have built the network, literally with their bare hands. They're on the rooftops, they're engineering, they're thinking about data security, they're thinking about what data means to our community, right? That a lot of the data is always kind of skewed in a funky narrative, as we know, especially for a lot of marginalized communities, right? What does data really look like for our communities? But for us, again, it's been thinking about how to integrate it. So when we think about how do we get funding, we're thinking about how do we, again, introduce this to young people, right? There's a lane for education and money resources for people who want to train young people, again, through the digital divide. We're also thinking about collaborations, whereas I don't have, let's say, a staff of 10 people. If I can collaborate, let's say, with the local college, CUNY, the CUNY schools, for example, I want to give it up to them. The Service Corps, if you guys have similar opportunities in your cities, look them up. Again, talented young people coming from all over the world, coming to New York City saying, you know what, I want to do something interesting, and I want to build technology locally. And so tapping into those folks and being like, you know what, come be a part of this community. And then again, not dispelling people, again, without, resumes or anything like that, and not thinking of us in that way as well. As an organization, again, that does environmental justice work, we are in a lot of interesting conversations, right? We position ourselves that way, and that's how led, again, to some amazing sustainability opportunities where you never know. People are trying to fund on a large scale, but also on a hyper-local, these kinds of projects. So also being very open to what you do very well, especially if you're a nonprofit, and how does that integrate with Wi-Fi and digital technology and infrastructure ownership, justice. How do you bring these things together? That's, I think, what has propelled us. Again, we don't have a huge operation. I think last year we did some numbers running, and we think we got like 40,000 people to tap into the line. That's, again, free in a small community. I mean, that's a huge deal. When you're thinking about, you mentioned me as a photographer. You think all of us are artists to some degree, right? We ended up in the space to do this work. Unintentionally become organizers in some ways, right? But again, using our assets and thinking again creatively how these projects play into it, and then taking the time to do it and giving the time to the staff to explore so they can come up with something interesting that somebody might want to fund. Again, I said a lot, but that's the crux of our works, I think, in some ways right now.
If I can just add on to what you're talking about, one of the things that as we're talking about, building out this affordable and sustainable, network, let's not forget that in the communities that we're building in are historically marginalized communities. And as we build this out, DigitalC on one hand, we're with empowerment delivering resources to the families, but there are people in our communities that we are serving, and key serving, so we're not doing two, right? Serving in our communities that we should engage in the workforce. And so these are training programs and partnering with these organizations that are doing the work. And so how do we bring local residents into the workforce to help build out, the network? Because so often, and we were just up here before sharing, and, I'm from East Cleveland, which is outside of a suburb outside the city of Cleveland. We're just so used to people coming into our communities and doing things to us. And then they do a check the box and host a meeting and say, hey, we did community engagement, but you never took the time to ask us, what do we want? And how do we want it performed? And can we be a part of this? Because, and this is why my title has the impact on the end of it. So what if we connect every single resident in Cleveland? So what? So what? Our poverty rate, if our poverty rate doesn't change, if our median household income doesn't change, if the people who are living in our neighborhoods are not economically improved as the result of the work that we are doing, so what? And so as we build out this infrastructure, how do we be very thoughtful and intentional about engaging and bringing the folks in our neighborhoods to participate economically in this build out? So I just, my little 2 cents on that.
It's terrific. I want to close out the sustainability piece, coming back to the numbers that Clayton had brought up. And one of the things that didn't come up was the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Plan. And last time we got together for a net inclusion to talk about this stuff, it was unimaginable that we would have an EBB, the Emergency Broadband Benefit, followed by now the ACP. It's a whole different world. Are you trying to capitalize on those revenues while they're available?
Hell yes. But not just me, everyone is. Comcast, I have my friend in the room here from Comcast, and everybody else, Tony in the back. Raise your hand, Tony. So hopefully nobody beats you up. But anyway, if I could combine that with sustainability. So the idea of these subsidies are tremendous. There's no question. Right now, there's not even been a deadline when it would be over. So there's something really beautiful about that. Sustainability is not just simply from the cost perspective. I think there's also the infrastructure perspective. So when you heard about the outdoor network that we all are getting into, to me, it's a redundancy. It's not the core. That's why Comcast and Spectrum, they don't talk about rooftops. You got to get the fiber to the buildings, to the homes. And we're starting to get lazy thinking, it's a quick, cheaper way to do it. Sustainability, if you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts, you got to have fiber going into your city. Yeah. And if we don't do that, we're going to continue to go through these conferences and talk to each other. So I'm just saying that to say, not only is the federal government trying to tell you we're going to pay you to do this stuff, right? AT&T put out a press release 2 days ago saying we're going to give free internet. Why? Because they can line their money with that ACP money. Fine. I don't care how people get it, as long as they get it. But if it's going to be sustainable, we have to value the fiber that's going to be way longer sustainable than wireless. Wireless is important for redundancy, and in some places you may only have that option. But for the most part, for your cities, for your tribal lands, for anywhere, rural, doesn't matter, we have to have a fiber infrastructure.
Just want to note that I did not put Clayton up to say that, just because it's 100% what I think too. I do want to come back to the technology later on, and so I'm curious if you want to address the ACP question that is at the heart of that too.
So yes, DigitalC, we are signing families up for ACP, but my feelings on ACP, she's laughing. I mean, ACP, it's a subsidy program for providers. Mm-hmm. The beneficiary, the residents aren't the intended beneficiaries of that. It's the providers.
You're a provider, though.
I am a provider, but I'm also a resident first. I'm a resident first, and I'm from these neighborhoods. I do a lot of work with young folks. My family's in these neighborhoods that we're literally talking about. So when you create a subsidy that is for a provider and you don't put restrictions on it, like, okay, if you get this, then you can't charge more than this, and you must deliver a minimum of this, you're just benefiting the providers. And so me as a consumer, a resident, if you're charging me, $100 a month, and I know folks who are being charged an exorbitant amount for low speeds, and you give me a $30, you give the provider a $30 subsidy, well, I'm still responsible for $70. That doesn't make it affordable for me. And so yes, we do take advantage of it. I think something is better, but there needs to be additional work on ACP so that it's truly beneficial to that resident. So.
You can skip if you want.
It's very similar. Again, subsidies, they keeps our communities in the same spaces, let's be honest, right? We talk a lot about ownership of infrastructure. That's a real conversation we have. It might seem out there for like I said, a small nonprofit, but if you don't own the resource get used against you, like we've seen in every other instance in our community. So, so we talk a lot about ownership. Yeah, we tell people, look, you can take advantage of the subsidy. Yes, we'll send a tweet out and make sure people sign up for it. But it goes a little deeper than that. And these are the kinds of conversations that, again, we're excluded from a lot of times, right? Because one of the things they'll throw a subsidy at you, right? It'll run for a year or two, it'll disappear. If you're not really doing policy stuff to kind of like upend that and keep certain things in place moving forward, right? And to keep challenging the norm, then you're kind of not doing it. So I don't know if there's any money in there for policy as part of this thing, but maybe that's what they need to do moving forward, because that's also a big part of it. Is like, I can send you to it, but to what end? Like it's just going to disappear in a year, right? And then you're going to come back saying that you don't have the subsidies, and then maybe they might come back, but again, it's dependent on the wrong people. And again, there's no policy to back it, to keep it there, and to keep pushing that kind of agenda forward. If you don't own the infrastructure, you're kind of at the mercy of it, as we know. And that is a huge, huge problem that we have for sure.
So we're going to go to a question here at the mic in a second. First, I just want to note something that I don't often, am not often associated with, and that's, I want to note that different providers do act differently, and I don't want to cast like a blanket out there. And I'll say that there are some providers that I think have acted quite irresponsibly, some of the bigger national ones. I think Comcast has been a real leader for many years in this space, not because I'm not critical of some aspects of the program, but I just always feel like people who don't study this space all day should understand that like Comcast has gone above and beyond what the other companies have done. I also think that local private for-profit companies have really done a good job in a lot of cases. And so it's not the case that like for-profit ISPs are all the same. So Aaron?
How much you paying him, Tony?
Well, if so, it's been a long contract because I've been saying that for years.
Good.
So, Clayton, I was glad to hear you pick up the fiber point, because it's kind of where I was headed, and especially thinking about, it's great that you've got like a 20-year horizon on your antennas, but I'm curious, as you go about that, and this is probably true for your network in Cleveland, do you see that fiber infrastructure as part of your own operational strategic model? And when you kind of engage your funders and you lay out your long game, I mean, is it really just hey, this is a redundancy play until, providers catch up or until there's a fiber solution? Or do you have a pathway in kind of the way that, DigitalC is setting up the network, like, okay, we're going to get these antennas and we're going to put these building rights and we're going to put wireless network in, but we hope that in, year 7 of that 20 years, we've got a fiber solution or a different, sustainable infrastructure solution?
It's a question to.
I'm going to represent myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's my conclusion, that you got to look beyond today.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm glad you're thinking that way. And when you think beyond today, everywhere has to have fiber. It may take a long time for some places, but ultimately, we got to do that. And it's because broadband's essential. It's not like a nice thing anymore, right? It's not like a luxury. It's essential. My newest thing that I talk about is if you're going to move all of your civic services online and you're not connecting, you're no longer a citizen.
Yeah.
Does anybody hear me in here? Yeah. I mean, really? So, yes, the big guys got to continue to lay out fiber. The small people have to lay out fiber. If we're going to have a country that's going to make sure everyone here gets the same sort of access, we've already done it. There was a time when you couldn't get mail in certain places of this country. Right. The government stepped in and made it happen. There was a time when there were people who had children that couldn't get to a school. We changed that. And why? Is because it became essential. That is what is happening now in our era, in our time, right now, where it's essential. So your point is right on point, which is may take a little longer in some places, and no one wants to hear this necessarily like a Tony, but municipal broadband is coming. It's already in a lot of places, but we're being careful on the head because we're not trying to hurt anyone. But we have to, as a country, as people, to say, listen, this is no longer sort of like a money-making sort of privatized thing. This is essential for people because we are making those services available online. If you don't get it, you're quiet.
So quick answer is yes, we are incorporating fiber into our citywide plan, and we have also been talking to the city and to help inform, from their planning, because we have a lot of development happening in Cleveland as well. So when you have these vacant lands and people are digging, how can we be much more thoughtful in making sure that we get the fiber into the ground to, be able to future-proof, right, and provide this service to our residents.
Thanks.
I use future ready. Future proof is a little much, but future ready.
Future
which
ready.
is important. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, DigitalC does a great job. I mean, I actually have planned a lot of my future based on what, look at this, Mr. DigitalC. But I'm serious because I worked with a lot of the people, the engineers over there that helped build envisioning, even using copper wire and doing all that kind of stuff, how they built stuff in hallways. I follow all of that technology as an engineer. And I think there's a lot there that's going to be, sort of creating templates for all of us. So I have a lot of respect for anyone that's out there trying anything, because you don't hear anything else from me. Broadband's essential.
Let's go with one more question, and then I'm going to pose a question of my own, and then we'll come back over.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Ann Campbell. I am the Washington State Broadband Office Infrastructure Manager. So our team is tasked with rolling out high-speed internet across the state of Washington. And I love what you guys are speaking to, but you all are speaking to very dense urban population areas. And while we have those same challenges that you've identified, we also need to bring high-speed internet access out to all of the other areas of our state, which is incredibly topographically challenging. But the communities, I think somebody cited a 4,000 or 40,000 person community as being small. I'm like, no, a 20-person community is small. So question number one I have is about the sustainability and thoughts and ideas on how to effectively roll out across large, diverse, geographically speaking areas and to reach all of our smaller communities. But with regards to the more dense urban populations, my background's affordable housing. And we had a larger city outside of Seattle that came to us looking for infrastructure funding for broadband to help their households with low incomes to be able to access it at a much reduced rate. And because of the current policies about unserved and underserved, which only speaks to availability, doesn't speak to finance, at least in our state, we had to say no. And I've got some ideas on how to address it, but I'm curious to know, in your dense geographic areas, are you faced with those same challenges where they're like, oh, it's already here, you just need to use the affordability subsidies to access it, or how you guys manage that?
So let me, in Cleveland, that's a loaded, because we have this thing, this battle going on. So one, to address the different topography, so we have a layered technology approach. So one form of technology will not be able to, we can't use it. So we layer it, right? Whether it's ubiquity, millimeter wave, CBRS over, LTE. So
These are
there's
wireless technologies.
Right, so there's a combination, so depending on the areas. Let me say with regard to this availability, because we have the same issue in Cleveland where they say, oh, it's available, it's just an affordability issue. No, it's not available. It's absolutely not available. And in the grant that application we submitted to the state, we actually took all 34 neighborhoods in Cleveland and we layered on Microsoft data, we layered on Ookla, we layered on MLab, just to be able to demonstrate from speed test, and then the county is also conducting its own MLab speed test, and then we went out and we actually conducted field tests and knocked on doors, just literally went door to door and had them conduct speed tests to demonstrate to the state that there are actually areas in Cleveland that does not have access to a minimum of 25.3. It does not exist. And I won't name the carrier, but we had another housing project that has 500 plus units. And we went to them and we actually met with them and said, hey, are you able to deliver more? Because the most that they can deliver to this area is 5 megs. 5. And they were very transparent. This is a great partner that we've had. So while DigitalC is an ISP, we do work with other ISPs in Cleveland, because it is about a partnership and it is about our residents are first. And we want them connected, whether it's us or someone else, we want them connected. And so we came to them and they said, we can't, like that's, it's the pipe, right? That's all we have. And so we're working to connect those residents. So, and even, as we were out during the pandemic, knocking on doors, getting residents connected, our tablets wouldn't work out in the field. They wouldn't work out in the field because the infrastructure isn't there. So it's a lot of work, but getting a really good GIS person, start layering it and conducting some field tests. I mean, nationally, I think we should have a Know Your Speed campaign because you need to pull this data to be able to prove that the speeds are not what they're claiming. The carriers claim one thing, but what's actually available and what our residents are receiving is completely different. We had one that said it was 400 megs they were paying for, and they couldn't even conduct the speed test. It was buffering. That's a whole nother issue. But, so those are things that, we've done in Cleveland to combat that.
On the rural issue, I can just briefly speak to that. This panel is not the best suited for for addressing that, but I do a show called Broadband Bits podcast, and last week's guest was Joe Poire, I think is how you pronounce it, from Eastern Washington, where he's working with a lot of ports. They're building out that dark fiber with that long-term approach for the rural areas, open access, making it available to multiple ISPs, partnerships with those local companies that have done a good job. And so, I think that model is terrific. I certainly think co-ops and those sorts of partnerships are the way to go in the more rural areas. It's still going to be expensive and needs subsidies. And then the last thing I just want to say that I think we're all watching is NTIA, part of the Department of Congress, that's Department of Commerce, that will be making the rules around the $43.5 billion for infrastructure. We'll be making the rules how to interpret this really interesting quirk that says that high poverty multi-dwelling units or multi-tenant environments, apartment buildings, can get money even if they have decent connectivity, if there's an affordability issue. So that's going to be a big deal for more dense environments, but we don't know how the rulemaking is going to go around that. I want to ask Danny a quick question because I don't want him to fall asleep over there.
No, I'm taking a lot of notes, actually, learning a lot.
I'm curious if you could tell us anything about any surprises you've had in doing this work as you've gotten into away from that artistic work and more into the broadband space. And frankly, I know you've got a lot of really good stories about combining those to inspire people and get them involved.
Sure. I think when we think about this work, and I say we, again, at the point, this is layers of environmental justice that we're really trying to dig into. And this is a tool potentially for organizing our community, right? So I think about those connections. I think that there's an amazing ecosystem that has been, even born more recently, even during the pandemic, of providers and individuals in the neighborhoods, and different, I say providers, not just internet providers, but also community providers, getting together and having these conversations that are not just about connectivity. I think we just mentioned it, right? It's not just a tech for tech's sake. It's really, what are we really going to do with this technology that's different? Again, that continues to actually feed the bottom line of our work. And again, for us, it's about preparing for climate change, and having a resilient network that we can tap into if the providers go down, which if there even exists, right, in some instances, right? So those are the things, right? But that doesn't come without a sort of, certain different kinds of conversations. And it does look like art activities. It does look like talking about ownership of narrative, right? It is talking about how do you layer, for example, folks familiar with land trust, community land trust, right? That layer over internet, right? Sharon's in the room. I'm gonna give her all the credit. Community land trust, right? Community internet trust, right? These are imaginations that we're pulling from deeply, and again, layering, to sort of see what we can do with the work. And those are the interesting parts of the work for us, right? Because it doesn't, there's no prescription to what that looks like, and who gets to enter into that conversation, and the principles that are created so that we can actually push that forward, creates the hopefully the new fine print of the future, right? Because I think that's part of it too, is that we're dependent on the provider to give us the thing. What we're doing now in alliances, we're saying, look, this is what this community needs. Can you fit this? And whatever provider can do that, then you got the job. It's the other way around. I'm not trying to look for your service. I'm trying to hire you. You're not hiring me. There's a different, but we have to do that. But that comes with really deep decolonization of power structures and knowing what you can do. So that's what I think it is. I think this is giving us a whole nother, I'm going to say a whole nother reach for imagination, a whole nother arm or leg to organize and to tell people, you know what, climate change is real. Yes, we are, the community needs this, needs that. And alongside it, this digital justice has to be a part of it. And that's what it is, right? Tech can't live separate from these things anymore, right? We have to bring it along. And if you're going to build a new green highway to, mitigate the air quality, there has to be a fiber line running through it. Why not?
Right.
We learned that,
Danny,
right?
let me ask you quickly though. Part
Sure.
of sustainability, I think, is also having the community excited about it.
Yeah.
And you told me in a previous time we were talking about, you're putting up new gear, boxes, things in these neighborhoods. You're giving people a chance to decorate them and to do art on them and help people get more engaged in that way. Just
Yeah.
tell us quickly about that.
Sure. I mean, we were told not to paint them anymore, right? Because you get you mess up with you mess with your signal. That's what I was told, right? You add a layer of
I thought you
paint
had
to it.
some
Yeah.
paints you were allowed to use.
No, but the idea, but what we are doing, again, we're bringing people along, and I'm saying that because you have a conversation, for example, with a 65-year-old, who lives, let's say, on the block and owns a home, and they have no idea that they are playing a role in digital stewardship until they actually start to put an antenna on their roof that they offer for free. And so these are conversations, again, that are kind of a little bit behind, but if we're not bringing it to where people are having these conversations, then we're losing it. And I'm referencing somebody called Mr. Hercules. He has a great name. Who's an artist in the neighborhood, and he's in the food justice world, right? For him, it's about how do I get food from these big distributors to a food pantry every week? That's his connection, right? So when he can have a conversation about the internet, that's a plus. But really, he's really interested in about how food and healthy food and how that's connected back to the community. So this is where I think maybe the exciting part is, right, is that we connect it back to what people are already thinking about and doing, and then we start to have those conversations, and maybe that's the first time that you're thinking about something called digital justice, and maybe that's a year from now you understand it fully because you're a part of it, but these kinds of things, they need to be planted, and they need to kind of be seeded, and they need to kind of live, and internet doesn't move at that speed, right? Contracts don't move at that speed, funding doesn't move at that speed, and that's another issue which we could talk about sustainability, right? It's like, what's that little piecemeal? You get the 3-year grant. If you're lucky, you get 3 years, right? That's a whole, that's a whole other world. Sustainability as it lives, for projects to live, for these things to take a foothold, they take years. And so that's part of it also. But again, if you infuse it and if you bring, the theater people along, if you bring the high school students along, if you bring the, I don't know, the lady who runs the, what is she? She runs the, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what this is, but the secondhand store around the corner.
Thrift shop.
Yeah, she knows everybody. Once we told her, we had 5 people that just speak Spanish come into our classes, and we had to pivot and create a whole, Spanish class. So now we have these, people that just came from DR, right, from the Dominican Republic, and all of a sudden they're talking about digital equity in this new land that they landed. I mean, that's where it is. You talk about long term, that's where we're going to be 5-10 years down the line when folks are like, oh, that's the internet that we wanted to build, because these are the conversations that we had, 5-10 years ago, besides just getting providers into the neighborhood,
Because they have a seat at the table.
Yeah, they have an equal seat at the table as much as
Right.
possible. Again, given funding and other parameters.
Exactly.
Question?
Yeah, I have a lot of issues going on in my head, but,
You're not alone.
Welcome,
You
you're in
found
the
the
right
right room.
and I'm gonna kind of complain because it says we were talking about how to build affordable and subsidized broadband, and I haven't really heard much about that, other than create your own and own your own, provider.
What
which-
can you afford and how do you build
Yeah,
it?
I'm a two-man operation in Youngstown, Ohio, the second worst connected city in Ohio, second
right.
only to East Cleveland. And how do I do that if not through the Affordability Act? $30 a month helps a lot of people. We've done a lot of surveys in our town, and our people all say that the main reason they're not connected to the internet is the affordability of it. And I think it's really more translated is they don't find value in it because they don't know how to use it, and that's why they don't, want to pay for it. So our approach is to teach them how to use it better and to expand that, and hopefully they'll realize what they can use, whether it be through telehealth or, literacy or whatever. But then I still don't see, other than through the ACP or previously the EBB, how I'm going to make it more affordable for them, unless I give them a free network, which I can't afford to do. Do you have any suggestions on something other than that?
If I just have a quick question. When you say them, who are them?
The people that don't have internet now.
Okay, and define that. Like, is it seniors you're talking about? Is it
No, it's-
poor people?
It's
Is
poor
it what?
people. I'd say poor people.
Okay.
Some of it is seniors, but I'm in the inner city. so
The
it's
reason why I
mainly-
ask those questions is to me, there's a bit of hurdle there that we all tend to embrace. Like who taught you how to use the internet? Nobody. So, I mean, this idea that
I know,
somehow
but I
may
still
say,
can barely do it 30 years later, but go on.
yeah, well, we all need digital literacy is my point. But I think to answer your question, here's just the way I look at it. There's two ways that we have to really look at closing any, if not, completely obliterating people not getting the internet. You're absolutely right that affordability is at the core of that. And the way that I think we go after it is that we have to look at a public-private relationship that moves forward, right? So a public-private infrastructure is going to make a lot more accessibility and affordability. It's just the way it happens. If it's 100% privatized, like you or me, we struggle because we have a lot of expense, there's a lot we have to do, so we can only charge so much. Whereas if you get the public involved and they're investing in, we can actually bring the price down and make it affordable, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a big opportunity there. The last piece I would say is what I have found in a very similar area where there's people who are on fixed incomes, maybe not any income. And what I did is I spent a lot of time, 5 straight years, of just getting their trust. I want to make that clear in this whole place. We can talk about antennas and rooftops and fiber and all the kind of equipment and all that kind of stuff. That's cool. But it will not resonate unless you get the trust of these people.
That's right.
You're going into their home.
Yes.
And that's the mistake we've made in the past, is that all these great companies have been in our home. That's intimate. Max, just look at me and I walk in your home and you didn't know me. You know what I mean? It's like we have this great opportunity, sir, to get to know that single mom that has to get her child to school and work at the same time. Get to know those people that are under, in terms of their income being very much mitigated. How do they have to live? And we tend to categorize them as not very intelligent, don't have this or don't have that. I work in public housing all day long. Most savvy people with money, extremely know how to get discounts, very good on how to work the system, simply brilliant. I can't even keep up with it. I spend money like a stupid person. So get to know the people. I'm just saying that to everyone, not just him. Everyone, get to know your public. Get to know the people. And when I get my final comment, when you'll give it to me, I'm going to give you the 5 stakeholders you can have in every single place. And if you do that, you can solve a lot of the problems in your neighborhood and in your community, in your city, in your state, and in your country. I will promise I will give you that. But I think your point is very similar to a city situation like mine. Getting to know the people is going to be the first step, and the public-private has to be
I mean,
part
and
of it.
that's actually not the problem, because I've been in my neighborhood for a long time, and I'm a social worker and community organizer.
That's
Actually,
excellent.
Used to be a judge, and I dealt with people all day long. So, but it's just the money. Where do I get the money? How do I make it affordable? That's what I'm here for.
Well, I'd be curious where Angela would take that, because my sense is like, it's sort of like if I wanted to build a sewer system or if I wanted to build a sidewalk network, like I wouldn't have the money for that. And like, these aren't things that like well-meaning individuals can figure out on their own, would be part of my answer. But I feel like DigitalC is one of these weird, you're not owned by the city, right? You're doing your own thing, you figured out how to make it work. So how did you do that?
I mean, we're in a very, I just being open and transparent, we're in a very unique position with DigitalC. We also had some of our own funding.
And you got a predecessor that you inherited.
Exactly,
And
right.
I've been
So-
trying to get them to come youngstown. But
I
go
know
on.
you've and so we're in it, and then we also have, a lot of partnerships in Cleveland, with the Cleveland Foundation, so we have a lot of different dynamics that other communities may not have access. I mean, we've invested, over $10 million of our own dollars into, building out that infrastructure. I don't know how many organizations, would just be able to, have that type of funding, to be able to launch, their efforts. But I will say that it really starts with that public-private partnership, with the city. And one of the things, actually NYC, they've done a really good job of public-private partnerships and even leading the work in aggregating the city's assets to be able to make it available to providers, any providers, so long as they adhere to the equity, to the principles, that they've set forth. So we can have more conversation, but I think it really is getting, the city as well partnered in, because, that's the part that we're also, working on as well, so that it is a full public-private partnership, because funding is huge, but with all the dollars that are, coming down, through the federal government, how can cities be very intentional, about securing those resources to be able to deliver that access?
Thank you.
You said street. You know what street is? It's infrastructure. 21, right? 20 was the year of COVID, and 21 has been the year of infrastructure. 22 is the time to make infrastructure happen. So to your point, you use that analogy. If you say a street, we already say a street, bridge, tunnel, infrastructure. And now you're putting broadband in that area of infrastructure, that automatically means public-private. Just saying.
Go ahead.
Good morning, panel. My name is Samantha Goodwin. I'm the broadband coordinator for Tillamook County, which is here in Oregon. It's just directly west of Portland, on the coast. And so it's a very rural county. I think we have about 26,000 people in the entire county. And the challenges that I'm facing right now in the county don't have so much to do with the mechanics of building the infrastructure. I'm seeing so much opportunity there. The problem I'm having is making people believe that they can have better internet. And I wondered if that was a similar problem you all face in some of your communities. There's a lot of resignation. There's this belief, well, we have great sunsets, but we don't have internet. Like we live in the woods. If you want internet, go to Portland. This is just like how it is. And oh, well, it's really, really expensive because that's just how it is. And so, I'm trying to inspire them. I have all of these, plans and things, and there's just this very well, that couldn't possibly happen here because it just never has, and it just won't. And,
That really resonates with me, yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Danny?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm going to keep pitching it. You gotta have to work with people where they are. And I think that's what we learned in all of our activities and programs, is that the people that want to do the work, they just don't know most of the time that they want to do that work. We have to create the conditions for that. And that's part organizing, but that's also in some instances part fun and part just having spaces for people, again, to gather and have conversations that might lead into some sort of work. But I think when you think about the concept, again, of building out the infrastructure, exactly, and I always get musical accompaniment. Thank you. When you really think about, I lost my thought now. Holy shnikes.
Why don't you go ahead and recover it? I'll just say,
just bring the art to it. You need some artists.
No, I mean, seriously, you should remember it.
You need some connections to schools. You need to tap into the people that are doing all the fun, imaginative stuff now, and then say, here, let's talk about Wi-Fi, and hit up Detroit Digital Justice. Checked out how they do activities over there at AMC, and figure out, again, ways to bring people into this conversation that has nothing to do with the internet. And I guarantee you're going to find like 20 stewards that want to do it, because the internet is connected to a lot of enterprise and a lot of creative. Get the most famous TikToker on your block. That person will be that'll be your digital steward. That's gonna lead it. Another thing I'm gonna say is policy. Whatever you're doing this work, please have a foot or arm or leg or eye, eyebrow, whatever, in policy, because if we're not making like real life changes on that end, we're just gonna keep working in circles. So know what's happening very locally in your state, citywide. To get a sense for what is going to stick and what's going to be law, you know, and what's going to be like mandated. And if you can push that line to say, well, you know what, let's mandate alternative Wi-Fi groups, let's mandate, you know, mesh networks, like you can make those changes, and then that stuff that you're looking for, people saying, oh, I want to be a part of it, I think comes to light, but it has to be tied to something that people are already doing. That's what we noticed in the short time that we've been doing the work, for sure.
And I'll just add, you've heard like the great things that DigitalC has done, but we've had some serious lessons learned too. And that was around all of our great plans. There was a senior high-rise, we, designed all this on Zoom, seniors on the move. We had it fully programmed out, and people didn't show up. And so that was all the great planning in the world. And what we decided to do is like, did we even ask them what they wanted? We thought it was great, but did we stop to ask the residents what they wanted? And so we then just set up office hours in the lobby, with the little plexiglass, and had folks there that was just available to find out how can we help? And then it was from that, hey, can you get WhatsApp on my phone, because we had a large Hispanic population. So it was like, okay, let's get you installed with the WhatsApp. Another one, it was to log into the internet so she could see her soap operas, And so, but once you start to, order DoorDash, whatever it was, but once you start to connect with what's relevant to them and what's important, then you can then meet them there and then have the conversation. Hey, by the way, now that you have DoorDash, did you know that you could, order groceries online using your SNAP benefits, at Walmart? Did you know that? So, and then you can get them into the digital literacy classes and all that, but designing without the input from the residents that you are serving, all the best plans in the world, and you won't get the outcomes that you want.
And I just wanted to note quick, we'll have time for one more question, but you should, after this session, talk with Roxy, if you just want to give a wave, Roxy. I think this question of hope is really important, and Roxy works with hundreds of rural ISPs that have provided amazing service. If you throw a dart at North Dakota, I will bet you a lot of money that you'll hit an area where there's very few people living, and there's a lot of really high-quality broadband available. And people need to know that that's real, right? like North Dakota and South Dakota have got it going on. And there's not many states that have fewer people in them. So we can laugh about it, but there's a lot of people living in rural areas who are like, this is my life. I chose to live without internet access. And it's not true. And people need to know that. So let's go to the next question.
Thanks. Jordan Davis, Columbus, Ohio. Going to keep it short, but a lot of our deep engagement with residents would suggest every resident's finding a way to get online. Whether they're hacking their way online on phones, cellular is survival. So I just wanted to add the equation of cellular. You saw in the Super Bowl, the new 5G home connectivity devices. How do you think this complicates or helps this equation? What ideas do you have about communicating options and choice with this new scenario?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to wrap up on, and then I'll give you your point to give us the 5.
Wonderful.
So, I do feel like, this is an issue that I felt like...
You can't learn to code on a phone.
Yeah, well, Clayton, I think you made this point, right? There's a ton of people who are going after these benefits, right? There's a fractured market. You've got wired providers, you've got wireless providers. There's money available, and if you have, if 100% of the building fractures, so 5 different carriers get 20%, you don't end up with that solution you're looking for, right?
Yeah, you're right. I have nothing to add to that. That's exactly right. Yeah. I have more to add to it, but I'm not going to. I want to get my 5 in. That's what I got to get in. Keep it going.
So what do you think? When you see all these different ads and things like that, and you know that there's companies who are developing plans just to make it look very attractive and easy for families to sign up for this stuff. It's like sugar rather than good food.
It shouldn't be acceptable, and you have to ask, would you provide that for your own family? With those same individuals, would that be acceptable for their families? And if the answer is no, then it shouldn't be acceptable for the rest of America.
Well, let me throw a number at you quick, because I just learned this from Dr. Hernan, I'm forgetting his last name, from, I think, Southern California. I think 2 out of 3 of the recipients of the EBB and ACP dollars are on mobile plans.
So I have a hotspot on my phone so that if I'm, out and about and I need to jump on my laptop, I can get the hotspot. So if I have a mobile plan and there's a hotspot and I leave my home and my children need to get online, so what happens? What happens? I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, we should have standards, and if people any provider receives public dollars, there should be minimum standards that they must deliver to every household that they are receiving these dollars for. Period.
So final comments then? Danny, do you want to go
Sure.
into that?
No, the only other thing I was thinking about is just the amount of money that providers make off of our data, and like how people are paying for stuff that honestly we're probably like giving them for free, right? And like they're probably making 20 times more money off of us than what we actually pay for, or we should be paying for it. So I think about that as well, right? Like, what does that mean? We talk about subsidies. Can I own a piece of that data that you're selling? And what does that mean to my phone bill every month, right? Did I just save $20 because you stole all my videos and monetize it on whatever? Like, no, for real, like these are the kind of conversations we need to have, because this concept that, this Wi-Fi costs all this money to come to us is probably, a little bit of a fable. And also what it provides, again, is also a bit of a fable, right? So we have to also think about all those things in the fine print. I keep saying the fine print. We have to look at the fine print very hard, because I think that, we lost the game to the fine print. And we're just giving it away, honestly. And I think that there's a dollar sign in there that would probably, dig some communities out of poverty if we can figure that out, with the money that's being made off of data, especially in marginalized communities. We've heard in the past, right? Like all these big platforms, they're born in our communities, and they get the foothold and they become cool, and then they become global phenomenons, and then we have no benefit from it. So again, where is the bottom line? Where is the money going, right? Like, what happens to your fiber? How much does it really, really cost to light that little lineup? And what does that mean? So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there, because I think that there's money out there that we're not talking about or seeing, or we have no access to per se. And that we're giving away, and that should be my phone bill. I already paid it. That type of thing. I don't know.
Did you have a final comment, Angela, and then we'll let Clayton use the rest of the time to list those off?
Just a final. And I'll borrow this. One of, actually, she's my community engagement manager, Kat, and this is how we kind of move through this space. And she kind of has a mantra for us: growth is the outcome. So, this is new space for everyone, and we're all at different points, and there are so many lessons learned. And I think as we go through this, just being thoughtful and intentional, and know that, we're going to make mistakes. Everything won't be perfect, but just moving through and knowing that growth is the outcome, and that, being able to help our communities. I mean, that's what drives me and makes me, wake up every day. And being able to one day be able to say, hey, not only did we connect the residents, but we've reduced the poverty rate here. Our families' median household incomes have increased. So because of that, residents are, housing is now stable, so our babies aren't transient. And so their educational attainment levels have increased. So that's really, what drives the work for me. And when things don't go as planned, I keep that mantra, growth is the outcome, and that really helps me continue to drive and move forward and continue the work.
Excellent. I'm just going to issue one challenge here as you wrap up. If you can avoid hitting the table, I'm afraid that the sound goes right into the microphone and deafens the people who are listening on the speaker. But with that, can you take us home?
Can't promise that. So I'll try to just build upon what's already been said, and I do want to thank NDIA and certainly the Net Inclusion team to have me here, and it's been a great experience with you and helping us. And my fellow folks here, including the Bronx. You see, it's the only borough in New York that has the Bronx, but we pronounce it the Bronx. Just a couple quick things, and I'll give you my 5. One, first of all, I'm sitting on a committee for the FCC. And the FCC has a great moment, and I think it's great because we have our very first woman running the FCC in the history of this country. If that don't change nothing, I don't know what will. So I am so proud to be serving under her. And one of the things she's asked is for us to define digital discrimination. I'm going to give you my email, mr.banks@siliconharlem.com. If you have any idea on how to define that, I would love to hear from you. We have to present to her on February 23rd, so I only got a week. So if you have some words, please do that. My 5 things. Feel free to write this down. I'm serious. So let me tell you what they are. 1, to create an ecosystem to make sure everyone has broadband. That's sort of the thinking here. 1, you do have to have the public to the table. Think of it as a table. You need the public's voice. That's your mayor, that's your council people, that's those that are touching the laws and the things that are going to guide how we get this done. You want the private sector. You do want the private sector. Look at Amazon, $1 trillion company based on what? Being on the internet.
Yep.
They got skin in this game. They want the people that are not on board. They want more money. Get the private sector, no matter where they are, get them to the table. You want your academics, your universities, your high schools, get them to the table. You have to get them to the table. That's where the research comes from. I've been able to drive over $75 million into New York by just hooking up with academics we did a 5G test bed in 2018 before a commercial ever came out with it. We are now currently working on 6G. Get that done. Stakeholders, that's your 4th version, right? I'm on 4, right? Stakeholders. Those are your churches, your boys and girls clubs, your YMCAs. They're touching your people every single day, including some of you. So make sure you're getting that voice to the table. And finally, is people themselves. Walk the streets. It's easier in New York than most places, but certainly go around your community and see how people are moving and grooving. Because if you don't know how people are moving, not everyone's working like you are. They're working in different ways and different times and different challenges. And when you do that, you sit in the middle of that wheel. And you start creating the interpretation, because private may not really speak the same language as public, or the stakeholders may not talk the same language as the academics. So you sit in the middle of that. You create that ecosystem where everyone can come to the table and say, yes, we can at least agree that everyone has to be connected. You do that, and we flatten this thing out. We no longer have to have these kind of weird conversations. This is essential. And that is to me, that is a key way of getting it done. That way no one's left out. Oftentimes we make all these ideas and rules and programs, and nobody's talked to anybody it's going to impact. You know what I mean? So you get 50% of people rather than the other 100%. So is that good enough?
That's a great way to leave.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.